Hello and welcome back to El Pozo, the Primera RFEF show. I'm your host, Nick Bell, once again, here to talk about an action-packed weekend down the well in the Spanish third tier. And I'm delighted to be joined, not for the first time this weekend, by my El Pozo co-host. We are reunited once again, Liam, after I saw you this weekend in Madrid.
You did indeed, yes, and we made the short journey, didn't we, to the northeast of Madrid to go and watch a Primera Federación team, Guadalajara, Deportivo Guadalajara. It was a brilliant experience, and we'll talk a bit more about it perhaps later on, but we have also recorded another show, haven't we, which focuses entirely on that game, another El Pozo en Directo, which is on the same feed as the main show. And so if you want to find out what we had to say about that game, and also some other special guests that we brought with us, then get across to the feed and have a listen to it.
Yes, it was one half of the football weekender, we'll call it. I'm more akin to call it the Liam Bambridge football weekender because you are both the host of El Pozo and the Spanish Segunda, so therefore it's under your umbrella. So I think that's what we should refer to it as now as we go forward. But I tell you what, Liam, I had an absolute blast in Guadalajara. What a place that is in terms of the Pedro Escatin, the stadium, the fans, the shirts. There's one right behind me here. I know you've got yours lurking around somewhere as well. It was a really good weekend, and thank you for the company nonetheless. I'm sure we'll talk about it again very, very shortly. Let's move into some news. We've actually got a fair bit to work our way through this evening. So firstly, last Thursday was a press conference held by the players of Juventud de Torremolinos. We know that they've obviously had struggles with unpaid wages recently, but the players wanted to provide some clarity, Liam, around why they were taking certain measures, in relation to training and things like that, because essentially they're owed a lot of money, aren't they?
Yeah, I think they are, and I think that they clearly had to say something publicly about it. It is a bit extraordinary, isn't it? A press conference held by the players to sort of explain why they're not happy about not being paid. I think that could only really happen in Spain, couldn't it? I can't imagine happening in the UK for certain. I think they've mostly been paid for August, haven't they? But some haven't been paid for July. There were promotion bonuses that were promised to them that haven't been paid, of course. They just really need to get this sorted, don't they? And I think the problem here is that what we're hearing is that the people in charge, as we know, have a rather dubious history in terms of club ownership that managed to get involved in a club in Belgium that's subsequently gone to the wall. They don't want to sell. They just want somebody to invest in the club. And that isn't really something that people seem to want to do. They want them out. They want to buy the club, or alternatively, they want, that's the only condition, isn't it? We're not prepared to put money in. Quite understandably, I'm not prepared to put money in. The job they've done financially suggests that you wouldn't give them your money, and that's I think what the players were saying, weren't they, as well? They were kind of making that clear as well, that the situation could be resolved, but the current ownership group do not want to sell, and that is of course the offshot of that is that the players aren't getting paid. And if they did have a new person in charge, new owner, you would have to hope that one of the guarantees that they would get when that new owner rocked up was that they got paid. So, but the trouble is, Spanish lower league football does have quite a checkered history in this front. We know how many teams have gone to the wall because players haven't been paid, and there've been teams wound up, and then a very similar team takes its place. And there are some situations with other clubs, even in these two divisions, isn't there, that we're hearing about over the last few days.
Yeah, I think it was a couple of tweets put out into the ether, sort of like to explain sort of like the financial layout of the league, in the last couple of months. And I think it's fair to say, before we maybe get into that one, the situations at a Primera RF level, at the third tier level, are still there, but it's a downside better than it was, if I remember rightly, Liam. Because when we're talking about the Segunda Bay days, there were teams that literally would be, literally not allowed to compete because they owed a debt to the RFEF and things like that. So it's seemingly better. But when you read this here, we've got 11 clubs that haven't presented their accounts to the league, so they're not fully up to date. We've got several teams with their salaries not paid up until the end of September. Bearing in mind it's November in a week's time, and 3 of those teams are playoff teams, which makes you wonder as well in terms of what's going on there. It's something that they need to get a little bit better at. Is this just teething problems, Liam, or is this something that's maybe going to be quite serious moving forward?
Well, as I say, it's something that has haunted the lower tiers of Spanish football for many years. I would agree that under the new system, it does seem a little bit better. But the fact remains, again, that there's no límite salarial, there's no structure in place to try and protect clubs from this. Of course, in the top two divisions, there is. And unfortunately, this is a situation that I think will recur. And it does worry me that, and we saw it last season as well, I think this is going to just carry on. And I think that what needs to happen is that there needs to be some, I don't know, it's difficult because you can't leave these clubs either. You're not getting paid. There's nowhere for you to go, is there? I'm not sure. There was a time when clubs didn't have to pay their players until the end of their contract. So they weren't deemed to be in breach of contract until that contract actually finished and it wasn't paid in full. And of course, most contracts run to the following June. So you had players that were months and months without getting paid and weren't free to go because essentially the club hadn't broken any contractual agreement. That's how the contracts worked. I'm not sure if that's changed since then, but certainly it seems bizarre to me that this number of players are not getting paid and apparently can't do anything about it. It would seem there's something in there, apart from the fact, of course, that the transfer window is shut. But they should be free agents for me. It's something they need to look at, whether if you don't pay players for at least 2 months or something, they should be free to go elsewhere. Because the problem with that is you've got to have other clubs that can afford to pay them. They've already decided what they're going to spend on their season salaries, and you've also got to have spaces in your team for these players to join them. So yeah, it's a mess. I'm afraid it's not something I like to dwell on when we want to be positive about Primera RFEF, but it is something that they need to address quite urgently. But I'm not holding my breath, to be honest.
No, absolutely not, and it's something that we'll definitely keep our eyes on, in terms of reporting those and letting you guys know as well, because it is a bit of a dubious landscape at times, isn't it, Liam? Like you say. Maybe to head off in a different direction, we did note last week that it is Jornada Ocho, therefore it is itchy trigger finger time for presidents, directors, club owners, and we have had our first casualty with a few more dominoes expected to fall this week, Liam. Javi Cabello at El Dense, he's been potted by, I assume, the new owners have not been maybe inspired by him, but there's a couple of other names which are floating around the ether as well, and one that's not been confirmed just yet, but it's as good has been confirmed, hasn't it?
Yeah, the situation regarding Paco Gémez is very strange because clearly walls have ears sometimes, don't they? And it does seem that the Directiva at Ibiza have met and decided that they need to look in a different direction as far as the head coach is concerned. Paco Gémez, obviously, second spell at Ibiza, he's been there barely a year this second time around. All good last year up to a point, but then they sort of hit the skids a bit, didn't they? And ended up in the playoffs, and they looked at one stage that they were going to be champions of Grupo Dos, and didn't make it through the playoffs and haven't started terribly well. And I do think he's found a situation a bit compromised this week because he gave the players Friday off, and then reports were that he went to a family celebration on Friday. Now, it's not normal for players in Spain with a game of the weekend to be having Friday off. In fact, Paco Gémez has only done it once his entire time in charge this time around with Ibiza, and that was when they'd had a playoff game, I think, on the Thursday night or something. So, this is not normal, and it feels to me like something that perhaps was the final straw, and also perhaps contractually gives the club the chance to get out of this one, because he surely shouldn't have done that. And he was questioned about it in his press conference and was quite defiant, as Paco Gémez often is. But they've won the weekend and he's still on his way. So I kind of feel like that might have been the final straw for the Directiva at Ibiza.
Yeah, cause it is an odd one, obviously, when you've got to think about Ibiza being, an island-based club, as well as that, if they're playing on Sunday, it's likely that a Saturday will be a travelling day. So if you give the players the Friday off as well, where is the preparation, to maintain fitness and things like that? And also, it didn't really matter because they did go on to win this weekend, as we'll speak about later. But it does feel like they were looking for something to give him the nudge with, because the results haven't really been there, Liam, have they? They started brightly after 2 games, but he has flattered to deceive with, possibly maybe outside of Tenerife, the best squad, or one of the best squads at the third tier level. So, it sounds like maybe they need, a bit of refreshing. A couple of names mentioned to me today that I know we spoke about earlier for the Real Murcia job, which we'll come on to in a second. Beto Company, he'd be a good move. Fran Fernandez, maybe. Ruben Alves, if they really wanted to be, quite... I don't know what the word would be for Ruben Alves. It's quite a big name to drop down to Primera RF, but Ibiza have got cash to throw at it if they need to, don't they?
Yeah, Albert's an interesting one, isn't it? I think he's managed mostly, of course, in Segunda. He's been at Lugo and also at Albacete and Sporting Gijón, but he's free, and it's the kind of club, as you say, they can probably afford to pay his wages. But yeah, I do wonder whether there's 2 or 3 quite good coaches out there that might be available, and 2 or 3 clubs that might be looking to change their coach. And I wonder if that's also the case, that these clubs are sitting there thinking, if we don't act fast, the one that we've got sort of at the top of our shortlist is going to be taken by another club, and then we're going to have to rethink. So I don't know, but I mean, it's not yet confirmed, is it? But we do expect that Bacahameth will be moved on this week, and it'll be interesting to see who takes his place. One coach who, despite losing that game between Real Murcia and Ibiza, doesn't look to be getting his marching orders this week is José Echeverría, Real Murcia. But you think there might be a little bit more to this than meets the eye, don't you?
It certainly sounds like it. When you saw the fans waving the white handkerchiefs, at the Nueva Condomina yesterday, when you see the reaction of the players on the pitch, you would think, when you drop to bottom of Grupo Dos as a club the size of Real Murcia, you'd think this would be the time to make a change. But it seems as if they can't, or not can't might be a bit of a harsh word to use. It means they might struggle to actually pay off his contract. Echeverría is a very, well sought after manager. He's got quite a lot of, high credentials. His, potential buyout is exceeding $500,000, which, to some leagues is pittance compared to what they pay managers to X amount of contracts. But Primera RFEF level, that is a lot of money. That is a large portion of your budget to do that. And there is a bit of a, I don't know if it's a rumor or whether it's just a bit of conjecture, but they are saying that actually Real Murcia can't afford to actually get rid of him right now. Whether it may be they can do it in the future or there is a release clause eventually, but as things stand, they seem prepared to give him a couple more games to try and turn it around.
Yeah, also you've got to remember here, we're talking about a Basque coach and a Basque director deportivo, a Basque sporting director, and clearly I think Guaire has got that connection with him and has got him in on that basis. And so you do see this in Spain sometimes, don't you? They have their man, and he's clearly forgot Guaire the man. And I've always thought he's a very good coach, and maybe they can turn it around. But this was really poor at the weekend, wasn't it? So if he is going to get a bit longer, then he really needs to start making a difference very quickly. And he seems to think he can turn it around. You do have to remember that we are only 8 games into the season and there's another 30 games to go. But yeah, it's a really weird situation there where you feel like probably if they could afford to get rid of him, they would. But they, as you say, possibly can't. And maybe because they can't, maybe things will eventually turn out okay. But it's not looking good at the moment, is it?
No, it's not. I'm sure we'll talk about, especially that game of the weekend a little bit later and sort of the knock-on effects to it. One final piece of news just to come across is Oriol Soldevilla, who is a midfielder for Hercules, a really crucial player for them, Liam. He's suffered a cruciate ligament injury, which is going to keep him out for months. He provided a wonderful assist this weekend for their victory against Villarreal B. He's going to be a massive miss to them, isn't he?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's another coach there in Dorothy who is really under fire, and if rumours are to be believed, that they are actively looking for a replacement for him, despite the fact he won this weekend. Even going into that game, I think they were trying to work out who they might put in place of him. And if you're trying to save your job, then the one player you don't want to lose out of that Ecuador squad is Soldevilla. He's a class player. So yeah, big blow for them. We wish him a speedy recovery, but as we know, ACL injuries don't tend to involve speedy recoveries, do they? So he is probably going to miss months rather than weeks, of course. Should we move on to the Grupo Uno games of the weekend? Any thoughts?
Yes, let's talk about some football instead of the doom and gloom of the news. I always feel like that about the news. I don't know about you, but it's always like, I just wish there'd be some happy news once upon a time. And I suppose that the happiest we can be this weekend is sat in the padded seats, by the way. Great touch from Guadalajara to give us the padded seats. We were there. Baracaldo won, Guadalajara won. I've done that back to front, but still the scoreline was the same. A great game to be at, Liam, wasn't it, in the sunshine?
Yeah, the sun was shining, and as soon as I got back to England, it was pouring with rain. It was
me too.
48 hours to get used to the idea, but yeah, it was certainly a really good occasion, as you said in the introduction. As I said, we've got a separate show dedicated to it, but overall, I thought the draw was about right. I don't know what you thought.
Yeah, I think both these sides looked to play a certain way and took their chances and things like that. I think we were quite happy to see Salifo in action, in the flesh. And as much as others maybe weren't completely sold on him, I thought he looked pretty decent for the level we're at. Unfortunately, he got injured and was pulled off just after half time, if I remember rightly. And I think that's when you started to see that Guadalajara maybe didn't have as much going forward as they should do. But ultimately, after they went a goal behind to a very dubious penalty, Liam, I know that we stared at the referee at the FES box for this one, waiting to see what he does. Again, very weird experience, Liam, to see in the flesh for the first time. I know we've watched it a lot on the highlights and the live games when we're at home. Seeing it happen in front of you and sort of like, I know Matt, who came to the game with us, was sort of saying it's like the theatre of it. You had every man and his dog surrounding the screen, people who weren't actually involved in the game trying to get a glimpse of the screen to see what was going on, didn't you?
Yeah, there was a policeman at one stage, wasn't there, looking at the replay, and it was quite bizarre. You say to be there, and of course we were right on top of it when we were literally, as I said, in the Portland Director, we were about 4 or 5 feet away from where the referee was studying the screen intently. So yeah, you felt like you were very much a part of it. So massive thank you to those at Guadalajara who gave us the opportunity to do that. And yeah, it was for me a ridiculous decision, but it was probably still good to see. If this is what everyone's talking about FES, it was quite good to see in action, even if the outcome of that particular studying left me somewhat dumbfounded. But yeah, really, really good overall. I would absolutely recommend going to see a Deportivo Guadalajara game if you're visiting Madrid. It is not that far to get out there. You can get out on Cercanías, the sort of local railway. It's probably 45 minutes to an hour from central Madrid, but it's a fantastic place to go and watch a game of football. And thank you so much to those employees of the club that made it possible, and a really big thank you as well to Nestor, the sporting director, who was brave enough to talk to me in English afterwards. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, it was a really good day all around, and I will definitely be going back to Guadalajara. Let's put it that way, because I feel like I need to go and get the away shirt as well. Tom walked away with both kits. I feel like I need the away shirt now as well, after falling in love with the one that's now over my shoulder. But yes, do go listen to the El Pozo in Directo and just come with us to Guadalajara. It was absolutely fantastic. You can hear it all there. Your next game, Liam, was one that was happening in Ponferrada between Ponferradina and Zamora, and a really big win for the home side.
It was, yes. I mean, they got a win, didn't they? Last week, kind of one of those just needed to win no matter what. Didn't really matter how they did it. And but this was a big one. And what's interesting for me about this is that I've always thought Andres Prieto a really good keeper. I mean, I think last season I felt he was probably the best keeper in either the two grupos. He's been dropped the last 2 games, Nick, and they brought in Angel Jimenez, and he's kept 2 clean sheets. So that's a really interesting development for me. I think Esteve obviously showing no one's exempt from the possibility of being left out the side, and it's worked out really well for Ponferradina in those 2 games. So good luck to Jimenez going forward. Yeah, a bit of a nothing first half out of this game, and then Lopez sneaks around the back. I think he sort of tiptoes around the back. He's quite a big lad, Lopez, but the Zamora fence didn't notice him at all. Nice ball from the right. He just kind of gets around the back of the fence and attacks it on the edge of the 6-yard box, powers ahead home, no chance for the keeper from that sort of range. And I thought they looked pretty comfortable, Nick, after that. And then, of course, late on they wrapped it up, didn't they?
Yeah, they did. It was Hemi Fernandez who just bundled it home from close range. Like I say, a bit of a job done, which, from a Ponfe perspective, this is kind of what they've been building towards, haven't they? Because they haven't looked bad this season, but they haven't galvanized themselves, sort of to the levels they were last season. I think Prieto maybe needs to dust off the swimming cap. Maybe that, because I remember seeing him in the swimming cap and then him being absolutely unplayable since then. So maybe that needs to return to give him the power. But yeah, no, I thought this was really good. And I think as well, from a Zamora perspective, again, they just showed themselves to be a bit meh, sort of like, despite their riches and the amount of talent they've got, especially in firepower, that they are really flattering to deceive. And I think Juan Sabas is another manager who is sort of like teetering at the minute, isn't he, Liam? Where, like say people are looking to make some moves, he'll be looking to try and turn this around because he is a very well regarded manager in Zamora. But how long can he not be competing at the right end of the table before they decide to give it a change?
Yeah, I mean, that's 3 in a row, and the first one was that defeat in Tenerife, and I was not particularly upset by that from their perspective, because I thought they played really well, and of course they played with 10 for a lot of that game, and gave, I thought, Tenerife a really good game. But since they've lost at home to Real Aviles, who I know have started well, but that's a game at home. With what they've got, they should be beating Real Aviles on their own patch. And then this one, Ponce, I mean, I don't think they have played particularly well, Nick, so far this season, to be honest, but they're certainly starting to get it going in the last couple of weeks. It's a tough away game, but to come away from there with nothing and not to really threaten much, a couple of long-range efforts, but nothing really great, and to write home about. So, yeah, I think that we know, we've said many times that there's been some decent money invested in the squad. And we've never mentioned Juan Sabas as being somebody who might be in danger of losing his job. But I don't think you get that much longer. I think he does need to turn things around pretty quickly. Two coaches who I don't think are any real danger of getting them actually anytime soon. Real Aviles, Industrial and Talavera. Honours even between these two, both promoted sides. I just felt like this game, though, for a Talavera fan, never mind the fact that luminous pink kit must be quite... I don't know what to say. Must give you palpitations. I just thought the way this game panned out, I just thought, talk about roller coaster. They must have gone through everything, the Talavera fans, in this game.
Yeah, it was. It was a bit of everything, don't they? They thought they had taken the lead about 20 minutes in, but eventually that was ruled out for our offside. Again, very debatable. We know what we don't like about these offsides, at this level, especially being called off by... did this one go to FVS, or did the referee stick to his guns or back his assistant? We had a couple of instances this weekend, didn't we, where the assistants called it and they've gone to FVS and they've stuck with it. But it's just, how can you draw lines from one camera? We do struggle with that, don't we?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I don't think Aguador Lopez is either. I think there are players offside. It's one of those looping free kicks, or sort of, it travels about 40 yards. But I looked at it myself, and obviously I'm only looking at it, on a road TV replay. That's all they're doing as well, isn't it? Though, to be honest, I think the referee points to the halfway line. I think he points for a goal. So I think it was then when he went and looked at it, because obviously we know that they check every single goal, that he realised that there was an issue there. But I think Lopez is onside. You could argue that some of the players, before it gets to him, are offside, and maybe they're interfering and stopping, the Real Aviles Industrial defenders from clearing it. But yeah, I thought it was a harsh one. Then they did get a break, I thought, Talavera, and Berto Cayaga for the home side. He just slips over. I did notice in the northwest of Spain this weekend, it was raining in quite a few games. It's like classic sort of Galician stroke Asturian weather up there. There was definitely some rain about it. It was very nice in Madrid, but it wasn't so nice in the northwest of Spain. And I think Cayaga, he just slips over, and I don't know, it's a yellow card. It gets appealed by Talavera. It's upgraded to a red. I guess you could say it's reckless, but he makes contact. He hurts the guy, of course, but he just slips over. So to me, I don't know what you thought. I just thought, wow, that's harsh.
Again, I think this part of the FES rule is a bit bollocks as well. The fact that you can appeal to get somebody sent off, a decision like that needs to be, I think I said it on the Guadalajara end director as well, so a decision like that needs to be the referees and the referees only. Not that he doesn't deserve to have a second look at it, but if he gives the red first, then you can challenge. You can't challenge it to get upgraded to a red. That's where I kind of don't really agree with it on that one. But I completely agree with you that, that Cayaga just basically slips. It's slick grass. It's been raining. He's not being malicious, which is where I think, really is the red line between a yellow card and a red card. So I think he was very unlucky to be sent for an early shower in this one. But then it goes Real Aviles' way this time. And I pull this out at least once a year, Liam, so I do apologise. I kind of maybe went a little bit early with this one as well. The Alan Partridge, I think it was World Cup in the US commentary from back in the 90s, where it just goes, shit, did you see that? It had to apply for this Raul Hernandez Golazo, didn't it? It was a beauty.
Yeah, he smashed this, didn't he, from about 25 yards? Absolute rocket. No one's saving that at all. And at that point, they're down to 10, and they're 1-up with only 11 minutes to go. Talavera did get back into it very quickly. It's 4 minutes later, I think. So Marcos Moreno equalised that. Tidy finish. And then, of course, with this really late drama, where again, I think this is an FES appeal. The referee doesn't give it. So again, I don't know how you feel about that. You're not keen on yellow cards being upgraded to reds. How do you feel about appeals for penalties the referee hasn't initially given? What do you think?
That one I maybe can get on board with, because again, similar to VAR, if they see something where a player has been impeded, then that's slightly different for me. It probably is a bit of a juxtaposition in terms of my thought processes, but I can see if there is a goal scoring opportunity to be had, then a penalty could be given potentially, but it doesn't matter, because what does he do, Liam? He does the cardinal sin, doesn't he?
Yeah, Sergio Montero, he absolutely smashes it again. He's hit about as hard as Hernando did for that very Avilés Industrial goal, but he smashed it straight down the middle. Keeper goes to his left, I think, and then as long as it's under the bar, it goes in, but it isn't under the bar. Of course, hits the underside of the bar, bounces out again. I noticed that then that the cheeky Talavera bench, of course, when you make an appeal and you win your appeal, which they've done twice there, I think, you get it back. So you don't just get 2 appeals. You can have as many appeals as you like if you keep getting them right. But yeah, they then appealed as the ball came back. I think they were looking for a handball or something, and this time the referee said no. I thought it was a soft penalty. I thought justice was done here. But yeah, Montero was inches away from giving Talavera the win. And yeah, what a roller coaster overall for Talavera fans. Scored early on, disallowed, then started to play against 10 men, then went behind, then equalised, then thought they could win it. That's what we love about being a football fan, isn't it? Or they probably, as you say.
Yeah.
Any Talavera fans with heart condition would have found that a very hard afternoon to go through.
And both these sides as well, a lot of the promoted sides too, sort of like taking this division like ducks to water, and showing that they're here to compete in a spirited way. And obviously, both these sides were promoted last season, and I think both of them will would definitely take a point in this game, and they'll be happy with where they're sat in the league at the minute. So, nothing lost, nothing gained from that perspective. Danny Vidal, for me, still proving what a manager he must be. 2 weeks training to get these kind of results is just fantastic. Should we speak about some Grupo Dos games, Liam? The one that we couldn't go and watch, the one that the Primera RFEF robbed us of. We were in Madrid, but we were 2 hours too late for this game. But this, for me, is definitely one of the games of the weekend, wasn't it? I remember getting some text messages from you, very, very excited about this result. Alcorcon obviously started quite brightly, Liam, but there was a man you were speaking to me about last week. He was called Javi Lopez Pinto. What did he do?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because he as I think I said to you when we met and talked about this, he did something very similar the week before. He cut in on his right foot and bent a shot towards the far post, and it was about a foot wide of the far post, and probably one of the best efforts that Sabadell had all afternoon. But this weekend, he just got it right. He's bent it a bit. I don't know where he started off a bit nearer to the goal and still managed to get the whip on it, and it flies in the top corner. It's a fantastic goal. And the second goal he scores, which again, it makes it 2-0 by half time, doesn't it? It comes to him again, ball up in the air, he controls it brilliantly. He's inside the area, he's a bit closer in there, but then he just sort of curls into the top corner as well. I mean, 2 absolutely stunning goals from him. And I was really impressed with him last week, and mostly because of his pace. I thought he really had the right back on toes for Teruel. But yeah, he scored 2 beautiful goals in this game. And as you said, Alcorcon probably felt quite good early on and quite confident of getting a decent result. And by half time, they're 2 down.
Yeah, it must have been a strange one for Alcorcon, because obviously no slouches this season either. They've been performing well towards the top end of the table. They started with both Vladis freshly saloned as well, back with his blonde. I think he was back blonde last week too, but he must have had it retinted for this game too. And Carmano too, both of those starting up top. And, they did create a few efforts between them, but you just couldn't stop this Sabadell opener. It was right in the postage stamp, as they say. And I don't even think Lopez Pinto could really believe what he'd just done. He had a demonstrable shock to his face. The second one, just after half time, he knew exactly what he was doing by that point. He's been patted on the back by every single player at half time and told, go out and do that again, lad. That is absolute beauty. And another Golazzo to add to his goal tally. And then by this point, Lee, the third goal is almost comical, isn't it? I think it's a shot from Parecio. It's closed down by the Sabadell defence, and then I can't really explain what happened to the Alcorcon centre-back here. It's like he's running through cement.
Yeah, Jordi Polo will not be very happy with this, Billy. I mean, I don't think Costi is the quickest, but he strikes away from quite confidently and comfortably, and sticks it in the corner. Interesting that obviously the weekend before, Costa hadn't gone with 2 up top. In this game, he did play both Escudero and Costa from the start, I think, and it didn't necessarily have much to do with Sabadell going 2-0 up, because, as we said, those 2 goals were all down to Lopez Pinto, but just maybe giving the Alcorcon defence a bit more to think about. And on this occasion, Costier, who was at Hércules last year, will be delighted to get off the mark for his new side. And Sabado, really interesting because they really can't score at home. I think they've drawn nearly all their games 0-0 at home. They've been very low scoring, but they score for fun on the road. And I think it's a lot like a side I see quite a lot of in Segunda, Deportivo La Coruña, who are much more effective on the whole away from home because of the open space. The sides leave, they push on, and Sabadell have the ability to pick teams off, I think, on the counter. But at home, teams sit in against them and they pass it very well, Sabadell, but they just can't seem to break sides down. So, but the key thing is that they're unbeaten, isn't it? And they're right in the mix, but they need to turn some of those home draws into wins if they're going to be serious playoff contenders, I think.
I thought you were going to say Cultural Leonesa as the side that you watched this weekend that love to score away from home, but maybe less on that, Liam.
We're not talking about that, especially not a Primera RFEF.
Well, I'm not rubbing my hands with glee, but I would, it's a good side to join us. That's a good side to talk about.
Yeah, Alex said that to me. Alex Fitzpatrick said to me on the Spanish League on the show. He said, which we recorded in Madrid over the weekend. He said, do you think they might be in Primera RFEF next season? I was like, it's getting to the point where I can't even rule it out anymore. And it's been a couple of seasons when they've been close to it. So imagine Real Zaragoza. But Primera RFEF has had big sides in it before. I'm not saying Real Zaragoza are bigger than Malaga or Depor. They're certainly not. But they haven't been in the 30s since 1949. So it would be pretty desperate if they came down. But fingers crossed, I'm not talking about them with you next season on this show. How about Antequera Marbella? Sorry.
Yes, Antequera. Something has bloody clicked for Antequera in the last 2 weeks because they've made it 2 wins from 2, scoring 3 in both. And in this game against Marbella, looked really, really good. A fantastic open from Unjala. I think that's how we say his name, or I don't know if it's a silent N, but I'll definitely look to find out in the future. But he basically has acres of room to himself at the back post. Biabiani, we know what he's like. He can pick across, better than anyone in this league really on his day, puts it on a plate for him and he just slices it past the Marbella goalkeeper. I'm sad to say with this on the end, Gabri looked a little bit lost. I'm not saying it's his fault, but he is partially responsible because he seems to have lost his man here. But a great opening goal, wasn't it?
It was indeed, and I mean, I'm laying all the blame at Iscassi, obviously. Poor old Gabri having to play alongside Iscassi, and then he's completely at fault for the second goal, isn't he? He just gets it completely wrong. I don't know what he's doing.
Yeah.
And obviously, our friend Osama Chit gets in. I remember you mentioning him as one of your favourite signings of the summer. You liked Osama Chit. He came from Don Benito, but that might be his first goal, I think, for Antequera. And he scored the third one, didn't he? Did he score the third? He scored one of the three.
He scored one of the three. He scored the second one. Like you say, it's a lesson in action and consequence. Yeah,
chips over the keeper and then sort of follows it in, doesn't he?
Yeah, it's very cheeky. It's very cheeky from Osama, and he was one of my sort of like players to watch, given his performances for Don Benito. Obviously, coming in to replace some players that Antequera had lost during the summer, so big shoes to fill for him. But like I say, a lot of it is down to Iscassi. He is a seasoned, decent footballer, but he won't want to watch this one back. All he has to do is make contact with the ball and give it back to his goalkeeper, but he kind of just like fluffs his head at it. He should have even let it drop to his foot and passed it back. He had the time, and he sells his keeper short. Osama cheekily dinks it over the oncoming Vasilev, and then just taps it in. A very, very well worked goal from him, and a hell of a goal for him to score too. I think he might have scored a couple previously, a couple of weeks ago, but in the losses. But he looks like a pretty decent handful, and I think this is the part for where it's clicking for Antequera now, as they seem to have got like Unjaya and Osama sort of all playing in a way, and that's where the results are coming from. Marbella did hit back. There was a slightly to make it 2-1. It was a lovely goal from Luis Acaldi, sort of maybe in a similar vein to the Lopez Pinto goal we'll talk about, where it just sort of like drops in the box and it's a first time finish past the goalkeeper, Liam. It was quite a nice finish. But then Antequera wrap it up. Basel, I think it was like the third attempt, just smashes it past the goalkeeper basically in the 86th minute, job done. And again, we were talking about Antequera a few weeks ago, really worried about them, Liam. They're now up to 10th. Everything's fine.
Yeah, I think that's one of those, isn't it? When we talk about coaches losing their jobs, I mean, clearly, as we've said before, round about week 8 is when people start to get itchy fingers. But you do also need to remember that we are only 8 games into the season, aren't we? And Antequera is not a club. They've had likely to have had a bit of a hangover from last season because they did so well. They were always going to struggle to repeat that. Realistically, Antequera are a mid-table Primera RFEF side, and they're not that far away from it right now, as you say, after 2 wins. So just need to have a bit of patience there. Don't you? A lot of new players coming in, and as you say, both Njala and Chit are looking very promising now. And these 2 guys have not played much football at this level, of course. So that they will take a little time to get used to it, and they seem to be now hitting their stride, which is great for them. It's a great club, and we certainly don't want to see them struggle, do we?
No, we do not. And speaking of struggling sides, let's head down to Murcia for the final game of Grupo Dos that we picked for last weekend. Real Murcia 0, Ibiza 2. We've obviously spoken about the managerial aspect. I also kind of want to make a bit of a note here, Liam, about the state of the pitch at the Nuevo Condomino. You know, this is supposed to be an elite venue, a first-class facility. It's one of the biggest stadiums that you'll find in Spain, especially outside of the top division. Really looking a bit ropey before kickoff on Sunday, I thought.
Yeah, it doesn't look great, does it? We've seen a few pitches that have had a bit of rain on them recently, and they've kind of recovered a bit. I think Algeciras' pitch looks a lot better than they did a few weeks ago. I think Guadalajara's pitch does as well. I mean, certainly looked very, very brown, didn't it? No more than 2 or 3 weeks ago. It looks a bit greener now. I think unless they've got their paint out, it looks like they've had a bit of rain, and that's helped a bit. But yeah, this doesn't look great. And talking of not great, basically, I mean, Echeverria must be thinking, my goodness me, I'm under pressure here. And then David Pozo picks up a second. No, it's Paco Gémez, isn't it? You should be worried. Actually, it's David Pozo. Is it Ibiza? I forget, of course, that he's. It's because Murcia, for Murcia, you have El Pozo, so it confuses me. Surely David El Pozo should play for Murcia because that's where El Pozo comes from, the salami that they make down there, isn't it?
Well, that's it. We've got El Pozo, the podcast. We've got El Pozo, the Jamón Ibérico, and we've got El Pozo, as we found out this weekend, the train stop near Vallecas in Madrid. So plenty of El Pozos knocking around if you want your El Pozo fill, Liam. But this is I don't know what you thought about this one. I think this is kind of in a similar vein to the Callega Red, where, you know, for me, David Del Pozo, yes, he commits to the challenge, but there's nothing malicious in it, is there? It's just a bit of a trailing leg. We're so early on in the game here. There's not much point going for a red card by the ref. It's very overzealous, isn't it?
Well, Alex Dispatcher, who I work with on the Segunda Spanish show, he always says this, and I don't tend to think we shouldn't be thinking this, but it is perhaps a valid point. Realistically, shouldn't the second yellow be absolutely nailed on? It should be absolutely, you know, you've got to go, you've given me no choice but to give you a second yellow card, maybe persistent fouling, maybe, you know, just another really bookable offence. And I agree with you. I think this is when we have a quiet word with him. And maybe Gémez has to substitute him because, you know, knows the next time he commits, he's off. But I mean, and you're not telling me the Murcia player doesn't know he's on a yellow already. I mean, he's made an absolute meal of that and put the referee in a very difficult position because it looks like a really bad challenge. And there's another one where you think, well, surely, if he goes and looks at that again under FES, he's gonna think, well, that's not really a yellow. But yeah, regardless of what the situation was, that was a massive help for Echeverria. And I think that's part of the problem with some of the negativity. I mean, I know they're not very happy with him anyway, but let's not forget that this game, Murcia played against 10 men for 80 minutes and lost 2-0. You know, and that's just not good enough, is it? You know, in that situation, you know, you'd expect to make the most of what, as you say, is a little bit of a fortuitous sending off from a Murcia point of view, but they just didn't they?
No, they didn't, and you know, like I say, they conceded a penalty in the first half as well. Some, you know, again, some bit of dodgy defending. It looked like a hand to the head was all I really saw. Again, I've seen these kind of scrambles in the box not be given, but it was up to Federico to slot the ball past the goalkeeper after a check from FBS, and it gave Ibiza the lead. I thought Real Murcia were lucky not to have a goal, not to have a pen, in the second half. They went to a FBS check, but it went against him this time. Sort of like a little crop to me, Liam. I don't know if you thought the same. You know, if the David Del Pozo is a red card, then it's kind of in a similar vein, isn't it? You know, you've got to be continuous with this, don't you?
Yeah, and also, I think it's as much of a penalty as the Ibiza penalty. So, he gave one and didn't give the other one, didn't he? So, I'm not sure about that. I thought Murty were unlucky there. But then, they couldn't really much, could they, about the second goal? I don't think anybody would have saved that. Gaffney had no chance, did he? Unai Medina smashing one. I think I'd like to know which one travelled farther. I know they didn't have speed guns in Primera RFEF, but it will be a very, very close thing between Hernandez's goal for La Village Industrial and Medina's for Ibiza, wouldn't it? They both were absolutely smashed past the keepers.
Yes, I've gone with the quote, an absolute thunder bastard in the agenda notes here, Lee, which I think is the praise that Unai Medina deserves this one. I feel maybe I went a little bit early with the Alan Partridge commentary, but I couldn't do it twice. I possibly couldn't do that to Raul Hernandez either. Shortly after this, though, Real Madrid had a goal ruled offside. But the thing I want to quote about this is that the passage of play, it was rightly ruled offside, by the way. I'm not contesting that he wasn't offside. But the way they played football here was a lot better than I've seen them play in large parts this season. From what I've seen from Real Murcia, they've been sort of like restricted to a lot of sort of like really deep early crosses. As soon as you get it out to the right back or left back, just whip it into the box and try and get something for Flacos to chase or whoever else might be up there. That doesn't always really work at this level. I've kind of come to make the judgment that Primera RFEF football is very sort of similar to maybe a lower end League One, League Two, maybe even National League, where all the defenders are 6 foot odd and they'll happily pluck balls out the air for fun. This is maybe where ex-Deberia needs to think about how he plays football and thinks, well, actually, how am I going to get around these boys? Crosses like that aren't going to work. So this was a nice, maybe little bit of insight that maybe they can pin something on if they try and play this way more often. They can break teams down. They can pass through people. It was quite good to me, apart from him being offside.
Yeah, it needs to change, doesn't it? I think a lot of people are criticising Flacos because he's got 1 penalty in 8 games, and they feel that's not good enough, obviously, for somebody that they've paid quite a lot of money for at this level. But they're not playing to his strengths, as you say. They've got to play the ball through the channels. They've got to play to his strengths. I think that the defence can handle Flacos in the air, but you play the ball. He's not incredibly rapid, but he's certainly a player that needs to be slipped in through the channels for me. And the more they do that, the more they'll get the best out of him. But you can't hide from the fact 80 minutes against 10 men and they lose 2-0. That's just not good enough, is it? So we'll see how that story develops over the next few days. But it wouldn't surprise me if his position is considered untenable. How much it's going to cost to pay him off, we shall see. Let's move on to a roundup, shall we? Cartagena 2, Algeciras 0, I think was the Friday night game, wasn't it? Routine home success, along with Alcorcón Sabadell, of course. This was a routine home success, wasn't it, for the Cartagena boys? They joined top of Grupo Dos. They were doing really well, Algeciras, and then there's a ball in from the left, and Aleix Koch basically just steers a lovely header into the corner. The only problem being that he plays for Algeciras. So steering a Cartagena across to the left into the corner of the net means that you just put your team 1-0 down. And when Solano scored another one after half time, 25 minutes to go, I think it was, and that was it. I mean, they are very, very, they are the Grupo Dos Tenerife for me, Cartagena. They really excite me or make me feel like they're going to really blow away sides. But, they've got 5 clean sheets in a row now. And they are looking very, very menacing in terms of that title challenge, aren't they? And obviously they're top at the moment.
Yeah, and Javier Reyes got them playing some really, solid football. Not too dissimilar to what we saw him do for Ponfe last season, which, got them to within a goal of being promoted back to Segunda. So, it seems to have clicked well for them down here. Algeciras winless in the last 3 as well. We were kind of expecting this to happen sort of eventually. I don't know if it's off-field issues maybe affecting on-field, or whether it's just that they are maybe missing a couple of players, or maybe they keep scoring in their own goal, because it was another own goal after one from Mayorga last week as well. So, it doesn't really help when you're up against one of the top teams in the league. Speaking of, we've spoken about Tenerife being sort of like the front runners. The best of the rest so far is looking like Racing Ferrolium, and this weekend 3-1 against Arenas de Getxo. Fast start from the host side, 2 up in the first 5 minutes. Never looked in danger, did it?
No, and Pascal with a doubletti in 5 minutes, great start. And Arenas de Getxo, the problem is with them is they're not bad at home, but they're really struggling on the road. And I think they've lost all 4 on the road. They conceded 10 goals in those 4 games. So yeah, this was one of those ones that if you were going to have a bet on it, you would definitely be going home winning this one. And these are the kind of games that I think Club de Ferrol need to win and win comfortably. And they certainly won this game comfortably. So yeah, they are looking, as we always thought, like the most likely challengers to Tenerife. Another team that's pretty good at home and not very good away from home is Merida. I think they've won 3 out of 4 at home, Nick, and they've scored 6 goals in the last 2 games on their own patch, but they just cannot buy a win on their travels. But for me, the big story down there at the moment, although I know that a lot of fans are unhappy with the away performances, is Alvaro Garcia, this big striker who's coming from, I think, SD Logroñez in Segunda Ref, scored loads of goals in Segunda Ref last year. And of course, Islava, before that, scored loads of goals for Europa in Segunda Ref and came to Merida and really had no problem showing that he could do exactly the same as he was doing in Segunda Ref, one level higher. And at the moment, Alvaro Garcia is doing exactly the same, 6 goals in 8 games. Great stuff from him, inspired signing. You could say it's not a big surprise because he was getting loads of goals. Maybe the difference isn't that big between those 2 tiers. But yeah, he's worked out. But the trouble is they just conceded too many at their end, and they need to sort out their way form. But yeah, very encouraging the last 2 home games. Talking of encouraging performances, well, we're always going to encourage, Nick, aren't we? When a filial is 2-0 up with 87 minutes to go and only gets a point. Or no, was it? Yeah, it was 87 minutes. Yeah. Pontevedra 2, Osasuna Promesas 2. Tell us a bit about this.
Yeah, a brilliant comeback from the home side. Too much to the joy of, I hope, of our Huddersfield Town fan listener who took a group of a mixture of British and American people to watch this game at Pasaron this weekend, and they were treated to a comeback. And basically, yeah, it all came down to a 96th minute glancing header. It's what you want to see, and again for Pontevedra, it's just sort of like business as usual for them at the minute. They are performing really, really well. I know they will be disappointed to be 2-0 down to a filial, but it takes that encouragement and that confidence and the ability to come back from that and grab a point. It is always good. But like you were saying, the agenda here, I hope they didn't leave early to miss that 96th minute equaliser.
Well, even they might have left after 86 minutes. I mean, I'm quite sure that wasn't allowed. I'm quite sure that they were told that if they were going to come watch Primera RFEF, they need to stay to the bitter end, and I'm sure they did. And I'm sure they went home happy with the 2-2 draw with it. I think most of them their first experience, isn't it? So brilliant, top stuff from Huddersfield and Pontevedra fan to get a group of people down there. And I'm sure if they did stay right to the end, felt it was well worth a first experience of third-tier football in Spain. Hércules 2, Villarreal Bear 1. I mean, I said earlier, I think Torrecilla is very close to the exit there. I think they are looking around for a replacement for him. So this is probably a lifeline, but I do still think possibly it's a case with him of if and not when he's showing the door. When. I always get those 2 the wrong around. He will be showing the door. If there's any question, you did it the other week as well.
I did.
he will go, I think. I don't think there's any doubt he will go. It's just a question of when that happens. Obviously, they've got a midweek game this week against Athletic Bay, haven't they? I think if he loses that one, he maybe will go after it. If he wins it, I suppose. You never know. But yeah, he's not in a great place, I don't think, in terms of long-term job security. Lugo 2, Celta Fortuna 0.
Yes, what a result from the Galicians in this derby. At the Anchocaro, a really good win for the home side. They're 3rd in a row at home as well. But even more impressive that they played the last half an hour with 10 men, and not only did they hang on, they actually doubled their lead. Liam. We've noticed, that Celta Fortuna have started to stumble. We thought they would be sort of like the best of the rest in Grupo Uno chasing Tenerife. And we did notice as well that Hugo Gonzalez was left on the bench for this one. Do we dare read a little bit into that? Are they keeping him fresh for the first team maybe? That's obviously a lot of conjecture from us, but you don't want to be leaving your best player on the bench, do you?
I don't know about that one. I think it's a weird one. Yeah, he came on, I think, for about 35 minutes and didn't really do very much at all in this game. So yeah, maybe he's getting a bit ahead of himself, and they decided to teach him a bit of a lesson. And he did, of course, miss a penalty, didn't he? But yeah, it's a weird one. You just never know, do you? To be honest, I didn't even check and see if he was perhaps left on the bench because he did go and play for the first team afterwards or whatever. Not that far away, obviously. Lugo, we probably could have got back to be involved, but I think that's unlikely. I think he probably just was being taught a lesson. Or maybe he's got a knock, who knows? But yeah, he has been big for them this season so far. And yeah, Lugo, we've said before, I mean, they're really good at home, but they need to get some away wins going. And I know we've said that a lot of sides already, but Lugo are a side that expect to be top 5 at the end of the season. And so, yeah, they someone like Merida will probably do so as well. But someone like Unionistas to get Charles, they probably are looking for the odd win here and there away from home and back that up with good home form. Lugo needs to do more than that, don't they? And it's not good enough just to win at the Antrocado and not get it done against some of the slightly lesser opposition away from home. One team that did get it done away from home this season, this weekend, sorry. This is definitely the shock of the weekend, isn't it? Tenerife 0, Unionistas 2.
Who saw this coming? I did not see this coming. We were literally speaking on Saturday about how Tenerife are just going to run away with it, and now they've lost their first game in the Primera RFEF, and it was to Unionistas of all teams, who did win last weekend against Merida and have got now 3 wins under Mario Simón. But this wasn't just a smash and grab from the away side. They took a brilliant group of fans over to the Helidoro to back them, and it was thoroughly deserved. They were really, really good. Great to see 2 ex-Yaclano Deportivo players, Juanje and Almedo, be instrumental in the success, Liam. And yeah, we thought that Tenerife were untouchable. They're very touchable now, aren't they?
They are, and I think that's probably a fault on our part, isn't it? Everyone's been saying, yeah, they're just going to run away with the league, and we have only played 8 games. And I know they won the first 6, and that's tremendous, but they've got 1 point from the last 6. And those 2 games have been against Cataleño and Unionistas. So they've got some tough games coming up to Tenerife over the next few weeks. And I would still expect them to win the league quite comfortably. But maybe that's what they needed. Maybe there was a little bit of, complacency creeping in there. And you can guarantee that Cervera will soon knock that out of them if there was. I imagine they'll be training hard this week, Nick. But yeah, I do think that it would be good for the league if somebody does give them a battle, wouldn't it? We don't really want one team to run away with it. So I wasn't too upset by this result, I have to say. And obviously, I really like Unionistas as a club, and they've had some fairly miserable times in recent months. So this was a real fillip for them, and brilliant, as you say, that a good number made it over there and were rewarded with the 3 points. So it's brilliant stuff to see. Europa 1, Eldense 1. I thought Eldense were going to win this. If they had won it, would Cabay have kept his job? I don't know. And then you have this bizarre end. So 6 minutes to go, I think it was, and the visitors winning 1-0. And tell us what happened next in true A Question of Sport fashion. Those of you watching BBC One in the 80s and 90s, which probably isn't many of you.
Well, it's the Eldense goalkeeper Ramon Villa who comes out to sort of, I assumed, wants to punch and clear the ball, but by doing so, he plows through Jordi Canho. The penalty is given after an FVS appeal, and then a second yellow card of Villa just to add insult to injury, as you say, Liam. Canho obviously tucks it away from the spot. He's now scored his 5th goal in 8 games. He's looking a real handful, and once again rescues a point for Europa, who stay towards the top of the league, Liam. Again, performing really, really well, and it's a sign of a good team that they can carry on going and picking up these sort of last minute winners. I think that's 2 weeks in a row now where they've picked up either a last minute winner or a last minute equaliser, and they're looking good for it, aren't they?
Yeah, I think they're joints up, aren't they, with Cartagena? I don't know about this one. It's such a hard penalty one. This one, again, it's an appeal. I don't think the referee gives it initially. He does clatter him, but he does get the ball first. And I mean, I don't know. It kind of just stands there and waits to be clobbered, doesn't he? Doesn't even really challenge for it. He just so I don't know. I find this a tough one to give. I think referees tend to give keepers a lot of protection. And this is one of those occasions where I feel maybe they should have given him protection. Maybe should have given him the benefit of the doubt. You see it happen so often, don't you? Sometimes you do see them come out and absolutely clatter a forward or a centre half at a corner, and it isn't given. And here I am complaining that this one was given. So I'm never happy, am I? But yeah, I thought it was a harsh one. I was obviously pleased for Europa because we like them, and it was, as you say, showed great character to keep plugging away and get that point in the end. And I'd like them to stay up near the top, but I felt a little bit sorry for Bidan. And then, as I say, talk about adding insult to injury, and you give him a second yellow as well and send him off. It's pretty tough. Orense 1, Real Madrid Castilla 3. Oh dear.
What's there to say here? Orense still winless. I think the only side that remains without a win across both grupos now this weekend. We won't dwell on this. The home side, held their off until a first half injury when Amin is sent off. 3 goals in 20 second half minutes. It's just what Real Madrid Castilla can do on the day, can't they? You can never really judge Real Madrid Castilla for me. They're either absolutely brilliant and to blow you away, or they are absolutely dog shit. And there's no in between for Castilla as far as I'm concerned. But this was one where we don't like to see Orense get absolutely turned over, but unfortunately they've lost this one 3-1. Another 3-1 as well, Liam, was Fernando Torres' Atletico Madrileño beating Torremolinos 3-1. Brave efforts by the visitors, especially with everything that they're going through off the field at the minute. And it looked a bit routine for Atleti B, didn't it? And they'll go top if they can beat Hercules on Wednesday.
Yeah, I think they look a good side, don't they? Unfortunately, much they hate to say about Filial. Nastic Tarragona against Tarazona, 2-1 to Nastic. Just one, a good response, I think, from San Pedro's boys to that 100th minute goal that they conceded to lose against Alcorcon last weekend. It was kind of weird because it was 0-0 a minute for the break and it was 2-1 by the time they all headed for the dressing rooms about 7 or 8 minutes later, and that was it. No more goals after that. All the excitement packed into about 10 minutes at the end of the first half, and then first half added time. Teruel 1, Sevilla Atletico 0. Alejandro Palop made his debut in goal for the home side, son of course, a very famous Valencia keeper, isn't he? Was he mainly Valencia or was he Sevilla?
I think he was Sevilla, yeah, which adds insult to injury here, doesn't it? If you think about it, I think he had about 200 appearances for Sevilla. So yes, maybe Sevilla Atletico maybe need to take a quick look at it because I think they could definitely do with a new goalkeeper given the amount of goals they're conceding so far this weekend. But Teruel once again, proving a lot of doubters wrong here, Liam. They're just outside the playoffs in Grupo Dos. We've talked about Paras and his side, not having spent a lot of money or how much they've got to travel. Very in a similar vein to Tarazona. They're doing a remarkable job there, aren't they?
Yeah, really good. I mean, Teddy said last week, didn't he, the interview we did with him, Sabadali said, ultimately we're really getting it done. We're really confident we can finish high. They've only scored more than one goal, I think, once in those 8 games, but they've won the last 3 games at home, win the home games, draw the away games, the English method, just outside top 5. Tremendous effort with what they've got available to them. Filial is, some of them are slipping a bit, aren't they? But you just never know what sort of team they're putting out week on week. I don't tend to pay much attention to their starting 11. So it may be that Bilbao Athletic, for instance, have been fielding a weak team the last few weeks. They haven't won in the last 4. They lost this one 3-1 to Cacereño. And I think Cacereño is another brilliant story for a newly promoted side because they've only actually played 1 game at home. Of the 8 games they've played, I think they've played 5 away games, and then there's 2 games they played down in Extremadura. So, of those 5 away games and 2 sort of away games with the 1 home game, they've still lost 2 games overall. They've got 10 points in the first 8 games, and obviously they've got a number of home games to come. They'll have a few consecutive ones coming up, won't they, in the remainder of the season? So brilliant from them. And on the flip side, Betis Deportivo 1, Atletico San Luqueño 0. I know they're not a newly promoted side, but really hopeful that Atletico San Luqueño could keep it going when they went top a few weeks ago. And now, unfortunately, the last 3 games, just 1 goal and 1 point for the last 3 games. So maybe they're getting back down to the part of the table where they're likely to finish. And of course, a win at last for Javi Medina, which, as you say, confirms that only Orense after 8 weeks haven't got a win. Your 3 games to watch in Grupo Uno this weekend?
Yes, Grupo Uno, and I believe you're going to one of these games, Liam, and the first one is a Friday night match at 9:15 Spain time between Baracaldo and Tenerife. It'd be interesting to see how Tenerife bounce back in the Basque Country, but also we've spoke about Baracaldo this season. They're not scoring goals for fun or anything like that, but they are just going about their business. So can they be the next team to take a bit of a scalp against Cerveza's big boys? My next game is Arentero versus Pontevedra, Galician derby there at 12 o'clock on Sunday. Again, an interesting matchup between those 2 sides. And then finally at 4 o'clock on Sunday, an UNESCO Heritage Site derby I've put down here, Liam. The Roman walls of Lugo versus the brilliant town centre of Salamanca with Unionistas versus Lugo, 4 o'clock on Sunday. What about in Grupo Dos?
Yeah, I'm going with Algeciras against Alcorcon. I think all these games on Saturday, actually. I think that one's at 2 p.m. on Saturday, 6:30 p.m. on Saturday. A bit of a clash once again, which is always annoying because these both look like decent games. Sabadell against Gymnastic should be a cracking game in Catalonia. And then Atlético San Loqueño against Juventud de Torremolinos. Those two sides are not very far apart either, down in Andalusia. So those are like three decent games. I say those last two kick off at the same time. That's 6:30 Spanish time on the Saturday evening. Tell us about El Partido this week. Anything you would like to talk about or not?
Yes, we've got a fantastic guest. Mark of the Living La Cita Loca podcast is joining us to talk about one of the best players to ever play in Spain, but one that doesn't get spoken about a lot, and that is Martico Gonzalez. A very, very interesting player, very, very interesting story. Just a really cool guy who just wanted to play football in a place that he loved and where he was loved. So we're going to talk about him with those guys at the wonderful podcast from the Segunda. How about in the Spanish Segunda as well, Liam? Obviously, we are recording on a Monday night because you managed to get all your recording done at the Spanish Segunda weekend.
I do indeed, yes. We obviously went to Leganés Malaga yesterday, and it was really, again, brilliant to be invited to do so by Jeff Luna, the owner of Leganés. A massive thank you to him. This weekend, I'm at another Segunda game, so it's really pleased to be able to do that. I'm at Mirandés against Racing de Santander. The only trouble is that that's not been played in Mirandés, but it's been played in Vitoria at Alavés' ground, which is not quite the same because they only open one stand and everything. But it still should be a really interesting game. See Santander and cock a hoop after beating Depor last weekend, and Mirandés struggling. But be interested to see what they're about. I haven't seen a lot from the season. Of course, as always, they've got an entirely new team. So be interested to see if they will not be as good, obviously, as last year's team, which was fantastic. But interested to see if there's some young players in there that catch the eye. So yeah, it should be great. A weekend, 24 hours more, 36 hours maybe, in the Basque Country in 3 games. So that's fantastic. Also going to Arenas de Guecho against Deportivo Guadalajara. So I'll bring you my thoughts on that as well.
I was going to say Baracaldo, Arenas de Guecho, and then Mirandés at the, to quote from another podcast, the Mendirosa. I'm very jealous, Liam, it must be said. I wish I could join you, but as we've already discussed, I'm off to Disneyland instead. So you go to your Disneyland, which is Spanish football. I'm going to go and meet Mickey. But we'll be back again this time next week to talk all about Primera RFEF and El Pozo and third-tier Spanish football. I'll say thank you to you, Liam, for joining me once again.
Absolute pleasure.
And I hopefully will be seeing you in Spain very, very soon. And thank you to everybody listening at home. If you want to go and catch up with the Guadalajara visit, the En Directo is available right now. And all those other episodes that we've got where we are reporting live from the grounds are there too. And yes, we'll see you again this time next week. Hasta luego.